with the meditation or the music or the going to your happy place and imagining that and associating or pairing that with flying, then it kind of separates the two and creates this buffer, this divide between the act of flying and the act of dying in a fiery crash. Counter conditioning is widely employed in therapeutic situations through the use of something called systematic desensitization. Let me back this up a little bit here. Wrong way. Systematic desensitization. The patient is taught to relax on command and then while imagining increasingly anxiety-provoking situations. This is called an anxiety hierarchy. Okay, let's say you have a fear of snakes. And this new dreamy boy that you've just met loves snakes, and he has 15 of them, and he's just invited you over to his house. You really want to go. You really want to impress this guy or girl or whatever. And so you have to overcome your fear of snakes so that you don't have a panic attack and look like a little weenus in front of your new love. Hang on a second. So you go to a therapist, say, "Hey doc, I need help getting over my fear of snakes." So the doctor, this is again kind of this extension of counter conditioning. What he's going to do is he's going to take you through a series of steps. And this is called, again, the anxiety hierarchy. So he might give you a picture of a snake to look at and sit with and be with for a little while. So depending on how profound and how deep-seated your fear of snakes is, this will produce some form of physiological response. You will, start to breathe heavy, and you'll start, your blood will start pumping, and your heart will beat fast because your anxiety, this fight or flight, is kicking in just simply looking at a picture of a snake because you're imagining all the horrible things that can happen and how scary they are and how gross they are and whatever. But again, your body can't keep that up. Your body can't keep up this heightened state of arousal for forever. And your parasympathetic nervous system is going to kick in and it's going to kind of calm you down. But you're still looking at the picture of the snake. And what this kind of does is it kind of tricks your mind into thinking that, okay, well, snakes really aren't that, or at least pictures of snakes at this point really aren't as scary as I thought they would be because I'm still looking at them and I'm okay. And so he'll do this over and over and over and over again until eventually looking at a picture of a snake really has no effect whatsoever because you've essentially counter-conditioned yourself that pictures of snakes aren't nearly as bad as the real thing. Makes sense. Okay, so now pictures of snakes don't do anything for you. So you're already one step closer to the goal. Now he might show you YouTube videos of people getting bit by poisonous snakes, which is actually kind of a cool search. You guys, check that out. I've spent many hours watching that. Anyway, so now you're watching videos of people getting bit by poisonous snakes. That again, you can, empathy kicks in. You realize, you picture yourself in that scenario, that situation, and that produces an anxiety response. But again, you're still watching the video. He won't let you escape it because escaping it is going to effectively reinforce the fear factor of it. He wants you to sit there and just be with your anxiety. Again, your body can't maintain that heightened state for long. Your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, drops you down, calms you down, and you start to pair and associate watching a video of a snake with a calmer state. You do this over and over and over again. Eventually you learn that videos of snakes are not that bad. And now you can watch a video of a snake without, getting all freaked out and all, kerfuffled. And then, eventually you're going to stair-step this anxiety hierarchy and kind of up the ante and make things a little more uncomfortable for you. So he might take you to the zoo and have you go to the snake herpetarium and have you look at the, live snakes behind glass or whatever. This will probably produce an anxiety response. Your body can't keep it up. Your parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, calms you down, etc., etc., etc. pretty soon, after a while, you're holding, snakes, and it's not even bothering you anymore. So that's systematic desensitization, where you kind of take this stair-step hierarchical approach, and you sit with it, and you let your body kind of adjust, and you teach yourself that your fears really aren't as bad as you think they are. And so you kind of trick your brain and reprogram yourself to accept and be okay with things that previously would have freaked you the F out. All right. Once the patient can maintain a relaxed state while focusing on the most anxiety-producing scenario, the person is said to be desensitized, and the negative state loses its aversiveness. That's what we just discussed. Okay, so that is classical conditioning. Hang on a second. Now, we're going to move into operant conditioning. Operant conditioning, again, sounds very similar to classical conditioning, and from a certain perspective, from a certain point of view, it is. It's actually kind of up for debate whether they even differ at all, or whether they're just kind of subsets of the same phenomenon. And we're gonna, that'll make a little bit more sense here in just a second when we talk about what operant conditioning is, and how it can relate, or how it can be applied to behavior modification. And when we look at this, we're going to kind of examine, what behaviors might be affected by operant conditioning, and be able to and be able to kind of look at the similarities between operant conditioning and classical conditioning, and which one is truly responsible for the change in behavior. It's kind of a twist on phrase, if you will, and basically just know that it's kind of up for debate whether these two things are actually different, or whether they're simply just different sides of the same coin. All right, operant conditioning, also called instrumental conditioning, is a form of associative learning in which the consequences of a behavior change the probability of that behavior's occurrence. Operant conditioning, therefore, involves the reinforcement of appropriate responses. So operant conditioning involves what happens to you after you perform a behavior. Are you rewarded for doing a certain thing, or are you punished for doing a certain thing? For most of us, most people will seek out rewarding behaviors, seek out rewarding consequences, and will avoid punishing or undesirable consequences. So we will increase the probability that we will do things that we have been rewarded for, and decrease the probability that we will do things that we have been punished for. So keep that in mind. Operant conditioning has everything to do with the consequences of your behavior, whereas classical conditioning has everything to do with the pairing or the association of two stimuli to produce a change in behavior. Again, we're going to kind of talk about how those two things are related here in just a second. It is a subject of great debate whether or not classical and operant conditioning actually differ. Classical conditioning results from the association of stimuli, while operant conditioning occurs as a consequence of a response. Okay, so let's go back to the example of trying to get your dog to go potty outside instead of in the apartment or in the house. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to either punish him or her every single time she has an accident in the house, therefore teaching her that going potty in the house is not something that is good, and every time she does it, he or she is going to get a punishment, going to get a little swat on the butt or whatever. And you're going to reinforce every single time that she goes outside and does what you want her to do. So you might every time she goes outside, you might give her a treat. That's something that we do here. So you're going to reward or reinforce good behaviors, and you're going to punish bad behaviors. The dog, outside of being a masochist, is going to learn that going outside involves a reward or a treat, and going inside leads up to a swat on the butt. And so they are going to learn that going potty outside is the way to go, because I like treats more than I like spankings. I have a thing with spankings, I guess. Anyway, so yes, but now you can kind of flip it on its head and say, well, how does this differ from classical conditioning? Maybe the dog is just associating the pleasure of the treat with the act of going out, and therefore the act of going out is therefore reinforced by the act of getting a treat. And so the dog has now learned to associate the stimuli of going out with the response of getting the treat. And you can kind of see how that is really very, very similar to how the rationale behind this operant conditioning, and how the consequences of that behavior and how the behavior is treated afterwards, the reinforcement or the punishment of that behavior, how that is different from one situation to the next. Okay, reinforcement, again, we've kind of gone over this, is the process by which a stimulus or an event strengthens or increases the probability of a behavior or an event that it follows. So basically, you're going to reinforce behaviors that you want to happen again. Your kid brings home all A's on his report card. That's something you want him to continue to do in the future. And so you go out and you get him an Xbox game or whatever. That is a form of reinforcement. He's going to learn that the pleasure of getting the Xbox game, and he's going to associate that with the act of bringing home all A's on his report card. And hopefully he will continue to do that, because he would rather get the Xbox game than get the grounding that might result if he brings home all D's. That's reinforcement. So we have two kinds of reinforcement. We have positive reinforcement. This involves following a behavior with a rewarding stimulus in order to increase the frequency of that behavior. So you can think of positive reinforcement as the addition of something that is desirable. Just like the example I just gave you, your kid brings home all A's on his report card, and you take him out and you give him $50 or whatever. That is positive reinforcement. That is the addition of something that is pleasurable in order to strengthen or reinforce the behavior that it follows, i.e. bringing home all A's. The confusing one that seems to get students really, they don't seem to see the difference, is negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement involves following a behavior with the removal of an aversive or unpleasant stimulus in order to increase the frequency of the behavior. Now again, the end product is the same. It's effectively reinforcing that behavior, but the way that it's done is the opposite. So let's say that let's say your daughter is grounded. Last week she came home 3 hours late from her date or whatever, and you grounded her for 2 weeks. And in that time, she did the dishes every night. She cleaned her room, etc., etc., etc. She was on her best behavior, whatever. So you lift the grounding a week early. Now she's not grounded anymore. You've removed something unpleasant in order to strengthen or reinforce the possibility or probability that she will do the dishes and keep her room clean, because you've essentially rewarded her by removing something that is unpleasant. Make sure you guys watch the classical conditioning video excuse me, that I posted about boot camp or whatever. And in that, it's a lot of negative reinforcement. Anytime they do something good, they don't get yelled at. That's the removal of an unpleasant response to a good behavior. So they don't really get rewarded positively. They're not given things that are good, but instead they are not punished as much. It's kind of the adage, sometimes the only reward is no punishment. That is effectively negative reinforcement in its purest state. So don't get those two confused. You can think of positive reinforcement as the addition of something good, and negative reinforcement as the removal of something bad. And then we have punishment. Punishment is a consequence of behavior that decreases the likelihood that a behavior will occur. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You punish behaviors that you do not want to happen again. Your son or daughter brings home all D's on their report card, and they may have to do extra chores around the house, or they may get grounded, or they may lose their phone privileges or whatever the parent decides. There's actually positive and negative punishment, but we're not going to really get into that in the scope of this course. You'll probably get more into that if you take a cognitive class or something like that, where you look at learning really, really hardcore. But you could probably kind of figure out, punishment, just like reinforcement, would be, the addition of something bad or the removal of something good. In the case of positive or negative. But punishment, again, is exactly what it sounds like. You punish behaviors that you don't want to happen again. And it's the exact opposite of reinforcement. You're going to reward or reinforce behaviors that you do want to happen again. All right, moving along. Increasing amounts of reinforcement usually lead to more vigorous behavior, but not to greater persistence in that behavior. This effect is therefore short-lived. It increases performance as long as it is present, but behavior is quickly reduced in its absence. This has a lot to do with varying degrees of reward and varying degrees of punishment. You are going to lay down the swift hand of God for very, very serious infractions, and you might punish less serious infractions a lot lighter. The magnitude of the reward or the punishment are going to fit the seriousness or the pleasurableness of the behavior that it follows. If you bring home all B's on your report card, you might not get as high a reward as if you brought home all A's. And you can actually vary the reward sequence, the reward structure, based on the level of performance that is there. How bosses determine, which employees get a raise and how much that raise should be, or, this can be applied to all kinds of things. So if you're a really, really star employee and you go above and beyond all the time, then you're probably going to be up for a larger raise than someone who just does the minimum and doesn't really do anything bad, but doesn't really go above and beyond. So you're going to reward those people who are really, really doing what you like much better, and that not only incentivizes the person you've rewarded, but it also vicariously reinforces the other employees that see, this person really got a good promotion, or this person, got the corner office or whatever. I want the corner office, so I'm going to be like this person, and you're going to actually increase motivation for everyone else. And that's why, it kind of has that compounding effect. All right, primary and conditioned reinforcement. The principal characteristic of a reinforcer is that it increases the likelihood of the response that it follows. Primary reinforcers increase a response because of their very nature. Primary reinforcers are reinforcing in and of themselves. Food, water, sex, things like that, things that are reinforcing by their very nature. Xbox games, all of these things like that. Secondary or conditioned reinforcers control responding because they have been associated with primary reinforcers in the past. Secondary reinforcers in and of themselves are not reinforcing, but they are reinforcing because of what they can get you, because of the primary reinforcers that they are associated or linked to. Money is probably the most common secondary reinforcer. Money in and of itself is just paper. It's, you can keep it in your wallet, but until you trade it in for a primary reinforcer, it is just that. Money takes its value from its ability to get you things that you want or need. Money is not in and of itself reinforcing, but it is reinforcing because it has been paired or associated with those things that it can buy. So primary, secondary reinforcers. Token and token economies. Money can be used as a token that serves as a reminder of the other reinforcers it will buy. It's therefore a secondary reinforcer. Chimpanzees have also been conditioned to value tokens in place of the real reward, such as getting poker chips for grapes, etc. Chips in casinos are a very, very good example of secondary reinforcers. Outside of the casino itself, those chips hold absolutely zero value, but they are reinforcing because of their ability to trade them in for cash, which again is also a secondary reinforcer. But we kind of bypass that step, and we a lot of people nowadays tend to have been conditioned that money in and of itself is rewarding, but psychologically speaking, it is not. It is only rewarding because of what it can get you, what it can do for you. But token economies are things that use secondary reinforcers as primary currency. Check marks by your name on the board, or things like anything that has the tickets at Chuck E. Cheese. That's a token economy. Those tokens or tickets or whatever outside of Chuck E. Cheese are completely worthless. They only hold value within the environment in which they are obtained. Chips at casinos, etc. I mean, the list goes on and on. But token economies use secondary reinforcers as a means of primary reinforcement. In a token economy, tokens are used as reinforcers for appropriate behavior and can later be exchanged for other various reinforcers, such as candy, cigarettes, television privileges, or other commodities and opportunities. Token economies have been used in a variety of settings, such as schools, mental institutions, and prisons, to modify behaviors that have proven difficult to alter with more conventional techniques. Again, very, very closed societies tend to do well with token economies because they are unable to obtain primary reinforcers in and of themselves. So sometimes secondary or token economies are very, very powerful motivators and very, very powerful means of altering and controlling behavior, because that is essentially the most primary reinforcer they are able to get. Privileges or things like that, check marks by your name, that in and of themselves mean absolutely nothing, but they are associated with 5 extra points on your exam or something. Every check mark you get, whatever. But again, outside of that environment, outside of that scenario, it doesn't mean a whole lot. You go to your next class and those check marks that you got in chemistry